Have you ever heard of a politician so absurd, so out of touch, that you thought, you know what, a horse could do a better job? Well, one Roman emperor actually tried to make that happen. Yes, you heard me right. He wanted to appoint his beloved horse, Insatus Asse, as a consul, one of the highest offices in the Roman Republic. This horse lived a life of luxury most humans could only dream of. It had a marble stable, an ivory mounture, and even a dedicated staff of servants. It wore a collar studded with precious jewels and was fed oats mixed with gold flakes. The emperor would even host lavish dinner parties in the horse's name, inviting guests to dine with Incitatus. This story sounds like a bizarre joke, right? But the man behind it was no laughing matter. This was the Emperor Gaius Caesar Germanicus, better known to history by his childhood nickname, Caligula. And while the story of the horse consul might be the most famous tale about him, it only scratches the surface of his reign of terror and madness. To understand how Rome ended up with an emperor who valued his horse more than his senators, we have to go back to the beginning. Caligula wasn't born a monster. He was the son of the beloved General Germanicus, a hero of the Roman people. His early life was spent in military camps, where the soldiers adored him and gave him the nickname Caligula, meaning little boot, after the miniature soldier's boots he wore. When he ascended to the throne after the grim and paranoid reign of his predecessor, Tiberius, all of Rome celebrated. They saw him as a breath of fresh air, a young, charismatic leader who would restore the glory of the Julio-Claudian dynasty. For the first few months, everything seemed perfect. Caligula was generous and just. He granted bonuses to the military, abolished unfair taxes, and freed citizens who had been unjustly imprisoned by Tiberius. He staged lavish games and chariot races for the public, earning their adoration. The people of Rome thought they had found their savior. But then, something snapped. About 7 months into his reign, Caligula fell gravely ill. He was on the brink of death, and the entire empire held its breath. When he finally recovered, he was a changed man. The benevolent, popular young emperor was gone. In his place stood a paranoid, cruel, and unpredictable tyrant. Historians have debated the cause of this sudden transformation for centuries. Was it a physical illness like encephalitis that damaged his brain? Or did the immense, absolute power of being emperor simply corrupt him, absolutely, awakening a latent madness? We may never know for sure, but the consequences for Rome were devastating. The man who emerged from that sickbed seemed to believe he was a living god. He demanded that people worship him, even building temples dedicated to his own divinity and placing his own statue inside. He would have conversations with the moon and with the statue of Jupiter, sometimes arguing with it, sometimes inviting it for dinner. He began a reign of terror against the Senate and the nobility. He would force senators to run 4 miles alongside his chariot, or make them wait on him at his dinner table, dressed as servants. Executions became commonplace, often for the slightest offense, or simply to seize a wealthy person's estate. He took a sick pleasure in cruelty, allegedly saying, "Let them hate me, so long as they fear me." His personal life was just as scandalous and depraved. He was accused of having inappropriate relationships with his own sisters, particularly his favorite, Drusilla. After she died, he forced the entire empire into a period of public mourning so extreme that laughing or bathing was punishable by death. He declared her a goddess. He would steal the wives of prominent senators, parade them at his banquets, and then openly critique their performance in bed before sending them back to their humiliated husbands. He spent the empire's treasury with reckless abandon, building extravagant palaces, luxury barges with jeweled sterns and silk sails, and even a two-malong floating bridge across the Bay of Baia, just so he could ride his horse across it to prove a soothsayer wrong. The extravagance was mind-boggling. To pay for his lifestyle, he revived the treason trials that his predecessor Tiberius had used, accusing wealthy citizens of plotting against him and then confiscating their property upon their execution. He implemented all sorts of absurd taxes and food, on lawsuits, even on porters. He reportedly turned his own palace into a brothel, forcing the wives and daughters of senators to work there to raise more funds for his treasury. The absurdity just kept escalating. Remember Incitus? The horse. The plan to make him a consul was the ultimate insult to the Roman Senate. Caligula was showing them that his horse was more worthy of power and respect than they were. It was a demonstration of his absolute contempt for the established order and traditions of Rome. He was not just a cruel ruler. He was a performance artist of tyranny, using shock and absurdity as weapons to humiliate and control his subjects. Imagine living in this realm. The man in charge is completely unpredictable. One day he might shower you with gold. The next he might have you executed because he doesn't like the way you look. He talks to statues, believes he's a god, and wants to put his horse in charge of the government. The atmosphere of fear must have been suffocating. No one was safe. Naturally, this couldn't last. The very people tasked with protecting the emperor, the Praetorian Guard, grew tired of his insults, his dangerous whims, and the constant threat he posed to their own lives. They saw that he was dragging Rome into chaos and ruin. The final straw was apparently a series of personal insults Caligula had aimed at a high-ranking officer of the guard, Cassius Diaria, whom the emperor constantly mocked for his high-pitched voice. On January 24th, 41 AD, during a series of games and dramatic performances, Cassius Chaerea and other members of the Praetorian Guard cornered Caligula in a secluded palace corridor. Chaerea reportedly struck the first blow, and the other conspirators quickly joined in, stabbing the emperor dozens of times. His reign of terror, which had lasted less than 4 years, was over. In their fury, the assassins also murdered his wife and their infant daughter, brutally ending Caligula's line to ensure no heir could seek revenge. Caligula's story serves as a terrifying cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. He went from being the beloved little boot of the Roman army to one of history's most notorious tyrants. His name became synonymous with madness, cruelty, and excess. Whether his transformation was caused by illness or by the corrupting influence of absolute authority, his reign left a permanent scar on the Roman psyche. It showed how quickly a celebrated leader could become a monster, and how a great empire could be brought to its knees by the whims of a single, unhinged man. The story of the emperor who wanted to make his horse a senator is funny on the surface, but underneath, it's a chilling reminder of what can happen when power falls into the wrong hands. Thank you so much for joining me on this dive into one of history's most fascinating and frightening figures. What do you think happened to Caligula? Was he truly mad, or just a brilliant, cruel manipulator? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the dark side of ancient Rome, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.